Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and to this week's episode, which carries on the work on scratch building the viaduct. And you'll see how, among other things, I solved the problem of how to build the undercroft. One thing that I forgot to mention in what follows is that it occurred to me after the last video that where the joins are of the brick card, as I've cut each section out for each arch, they would be greatly improved and also made not so prominent if I actually sanded them down a bit, which I did. And I think, as you'll see as this episode goes through, in consequence, they're almost no longer visible. But I do have something coming, which if it comes off, will cover them quite nicely nonetheless. So let's get on and take a look at the further work of creating the new viaduct. When we left this in the last video, I said that I was going to complete the work of putting all the walls on, and then I would turn my attention to fitting the undercroft. And I realized that working out how to fit the undercroft, well, there are two things. One, it was playing on my mind, and I don't like that. But two, it dawned on me as I started to fit the walls on here, that actually how the undercroft fits on is an integral part to the way you put the card on. And then until I worked out how I was going to fit the undercroft of the arch, I couldn't actually go on and fill up the rest of them. So it was really two birds with one stone. By working out how to put the undercroft on, I'd stopped it playing on my mind because I was worried how I was going to do it. And also it allowed me to complete the task of doing the sidewalls. Now, just showing you what's here, if I bring this up to the camera, there we go. As you can see, the card obviously fits on here, but doesn't run all the way to the top. And I don't know whether you can see, you probably can't. The card has a slight instep here, so that this slots in above the curve of the arch. So that gives me the full length of the wall here, which is good. And then I started to think about, well, how am I going to do the undercroft? And one of the things that really struck me was that if I don't support the arch the whole through this area here, there's every chance that it will buckle or move, or when I'm trying to fit it, it just won't sit. And so, as you can see, if I turn this way now, you can see that I've actually put, let's get this right way, I'm working back to front. There we go. Oh yeah, there we go. I put a cradle essentially, and that is no more than a piece of this card, which I've cut the curve to be the same as the radius of the arch there. Because once you've cut this isn't very thick at this point, it tends to bow. So I've stuck it to a piece of 3.2 by 3.2 millimeter strip styrene to give it strength. It's perfectly strong to rest the arch paper, the Reditex in place there, but I was finding it was moving around as I was trying to fit things. And I have gone, as I said, with the Reditex and cut a piece of the Reditex. And this will give you an idea of the shape that's needed to complete the arch. These are both curved. You can't see this because I haven't actually cut that accurately, but well enough. So these have got a curve here and a curve there to fit into the cradle. And then when I fit these in, you manipulate them in place until they sit down. And I've already got it wrong. I'm not going to try and do this on screen because it takes a little bit of manipulation. But the aim is that this curve here lines up entirely with the edge there. And this similarly here. This sits down into the cradle at the bottom, and you manipulate it so that the line here is level all the way across a course of bricks and at the same level as it is on this side. And if I turn this up now and bring it down, there we go. You can see the bricks are in there to form the arch, and I will be able to do the idea of putting some strip styrene there to make the look of a lintel, which will, I think I'm not going to take them right the way across, but the lintel will appear to come out from, I don't know, 4 or 5 millimeters, and just sit there either side, because I just have a sense that it will look too bulky if there's a lintel going right across all of these. The question for me is whether I leave this as light as this. It's probably a little bit too light, but I think I'm likely to put just a wash over rather than painting it too much, because the variation between the brick itself and the course is rather good, and I wouldn't be able to replicate it. It's not deep enough. So I think if we can put a wash using perhaps some weathering powders, that might work quite well. I will try on another piece and see how that comes out. So having worked that now, it enables me to build each one of these, and as I've said before, these will all be individual. They're not absolutely identical, partly because of their position on the curve, and partly because they're all hand cut, and inevitably there's minor changes. But I was very pleased with this. This went in, but once I put the cradle in, it sat in beautifully. And I have had to stick it to the card. I did wonder whether I could get away with just the Redutex on its own, but it's too flimsy. The card gives it some nice shape, and helps it hold in position, so that's rather good. I have also been busy trying to work out how I'm going to paint this, and I have here a test piece which I will bring up to, it doesn't really matter which way is up. That's what it's going to look like when it's finished. This is using a technique that I picked up from Paul Chapman from Galgorm Hall. Many of you, I suspect, will know Paul's channel, and his techniques at painting brick wall are really very impressive. To get this effect using this card, I've put an undercoat of grey primer, which is actually, I think, Humbrol grey primer, because I prefer theirs. That's a bit thicker. I've found with this card, particularly using acrylic inks, that it's quite easy to wipe all your paint off if you're not very careful. But if you put a coat of primer on first, that's less of a problem. And the key thing is to let the paint dry between each coat, and that's at least 6-7 hours. What I probably do is give a day between them, so it takes a while to complete the painting. So the first is the coat of primer, on top of which I have bought a Vallejo stone grey. This looked quite greeny in the bottle, and there probably is an element of green to it, but once it's out on the stone, it's really nice and light, and I think I might well use this for the coins, which are now only going to go on to cover the joints here, and for something else which I will show you towards the end. So then it gets a full coat of that, and that's allowed to dry completely. Definitely a day, once this goes on, definitely a day before anything else goes on there. Then I cover it, working in small sections for this part, with black grey, and then using, once you've done about an inch of it, a square inch, get some toweling paper and start dabbing it off, and you can vary the amount of dabbing you do, and that's what starts to give you the variegation which you can see here between areas where it's darker and areas where it's lighter. That's one of the things that does it. That then has to be allowed to dry completely, so that's probably another day. And then again, working reasonably quickly but not in so small sections, go over with sky grey and then rub with more cloth, but this time rubbing to leave the brick course in there that you can see here. If I bring it in closer, you can see the brick course, and it also gives you more variegation on the bricks, so that what you get is something that looks like a rather old brick wall. And you can see here that there are different levels of colour coming through, including in some places there is the original colour card, but that all adds to the variegation on the bricks, which is what you're trying to achieve. So at this point, having completed all of that, I can now go and complete the building of the undercroft and the walls. And then I think it is a case, I think it will then be a case of painting this, because once that's done, I will have the coins to be fitted, something which I have in mind to be able to do the keystones for the top of the arch so that they don't look as though the bricks are all going to fall down below. And I will then be able to fit the top, what I'm planning to put on the top, which I am just finalising how to fix what I have in mind for the top. And there will be a strip of this card running on the inside for the inside wall that I'll be able to paint off of here and stick on painted, so that will make painting that actually a little bit easier. So there we go. That's what we've got so far. I will be able to show you some of all of that work before the end of this video. I said after the last video that I wouldn't let myself be beaten about running multiple trains. And as you've seen from the running session, I've managed this time better to speed match the various trains. I'm keeping my eye on them just to make sure they don't catch up with each other while I'm speaking. That pretty much, I think, brings Elvenhome to a close for this episode. You'll have seen with the green GWR pannier that it now is running with 2 autocars in a form which I have seen used. You may recall that my first autocar dropped both its buffers. Well, I managed to secure some replacement ones and fitted them on. I also took the opportunity to take the coach apart because I had a vague idea about fitting lighting. I will never take a Farish coach apart again, and I certainly wouldn't try to fit lighting. Everything I've read suggests that it puts too much drag on the wheels, and the quality of the detail on the coach that you have to carefully take off in order to stick some lights and people in isn't worth it. Much better to stick with the Dapol ones, which just lift the roof off. But there was an interesting thing to do, but it isn't something I would willingly, I think, do again. The viaduct, I've been working on it more than you've seen in this video. I'm waiting on a few things to come before I can completely finish it, but I hope in the next video you will see it completed. Things are going as I hoped, which is always a good sign. If you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you've got any comments, well, please do let me have them. And if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe, because it'd be great to have you along. But until I talk to you again in the next episode, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.